All right, this is it. So last notes video that you're going to have to do for me. Use this for 37 through 46 on your study guide and make sure that is done by Thursday, May 7th before midnight. So to wrap this whole unit on campaigns and elections up, we're mostly going to talk here about the Electoral College and the whole method of how we're going to elect a president and why we did it and how it works and what you can expect here this coming November. So one thing AP does want to point out is this word here, incumbency or incumbent. We've had this before, I believe, but an incumbent is someone that has already won. It is somebody in the House or in the Senate, or Donald Trump is the incumbent president. All right, so if you've already won, one thing they want to say is you do have an advantage to win again. All right. It is easier to win re-election and win a second or third time than it is to win the first time. And so there's a few reasons for this. You have a track record, right? You can claim, hey, I've been there, I've done that, hey, and you probably already have where your money has come from. So, of course, a big chunk of this unit was on campaign donations and how many millions and millions of dollars you need, even for just regular House seats, usually. So you have those established donors, and you could point and say, hey, we got this passed, or I was tough on this issue, or I delivered this for you, my constituents. And so it's just easier to win a re-election than it is to win the first time. And here's that franking privilege again. With you, you have basically free mail. Now think about that. You know, your average House district is somewhere around maybe 700,000 people. Or if you're a senator and you represent an entire state, you're talking millions of people. Well, that means mail can cost a ton. You know, one stamp doesn't cost much, but when you multiply that by, hundreds of thousands or even millions of households, if you want to send something in the mail to everybody, this is actually a really big advantage. You can mail your constituents totally free of charge if you've won. If you have not won, you cannot do that. It's a pretty big money advantage when you really sit down and think about it and do the math. All right, so for the rest of this here, we're going to be talking about the Electoral College. So when our founders, right, were coming up with a constitution and coming up with the idea of, hey, we're going to have a president, we're going to have an executive of government, um, and we're going to elect them. How do we do that? Do we just want people to vote? How do states be represented in the whole thing, right? Because I mean, the Constitution, the whole point of it was to have a stronger federal government, but also share power with states. So if we're going to elect this president, how do we mix that together? And their biggest concern, right, was, well, if we just let the people just vote popularly, just most votes wins. Eh, Remember, what did the founders think, of maybe the average American back in 1787 when they're coming up with this? Hey, it's maybe not, they didn't, let's put it nicely, they didn't really respect the political literacy or the political intelligence of the population at large. Okay? And so to get away from maybe people that are not the smartest, or at least not as smart as they were, so to speak, they were like, well, what if the public makes a really dumb decision for president? So they're like, let's get away from this idea, and instead we're going to come up with some kind of system to give states a say, but also we're going to have a fail-safe built into this, right? We're going to have a way to perhaps correct what might be a poor decision by the public. And that is where the Electoral College comes into play, right? The excitable masses, quote unquote, is, I think, was it Hamilton, I believe, wrote that one, maybe one of the Federalist Papers, either Hamilton or Jefferson, I think, okay? But, you know, it's a way to take what the American people voted for and say, okay, sure, but yeah, okay. Now, whoever has really won the most states has basically always won the presidency. There's never really been a time necessarily where the Electoral College just went the total other way than the American people. But the potential is there for it to be, and this is the biggest reason why. Okay, the founders were super terrified of just giving the American people right? Majoritarian voting rights. And you saw that. Remember, the only thing you voted directly for originally in the Constitution was your House rep. You didn't do it for your senators back then. You do now because the 17th Amendment, but you still today, we still don't directly vote for the president. So when you go to vote in 2020, hey, the ballot's going to look a certain way. It's going to look like you're voting directly for president, but you may not be. So here's how it's going to work in Kansas, okay? And this is how the map turned out in 2016. All right, and you can see that there are these like random votes for president that, Colin Powell and, you know, Ron Paul or, John Kasich and Bernie Sanders. And so these were electors that basically went against what the people of their state said. Okay. Um, this is now states can do this in different ways. This is how Kansas does it, okay, and how a lot of people will do it here on this slide. Now, when we say the Electoral College, we're really talking about a group of people. Um, it ends up being 538, which if you add up all the numbers on this map, it would equal 538. Okay, so you have 435 people in the Senate plus 435 people in the House plus 100 people in the Senate, and then DC gets 3 votes in the Electoral College. It's kind of like its own state when it's voting for president. That's how you get to 538. And these 538 people end up meeting sometime in December. Right, so the election will be on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. These 538 people representing the 50 states will get together in December, about a month or a month and a half later in this year, and they will officially cast their votes for president, usually based on what the people of their state said. In Kansas, all right, you have the Kansas, Republican and then the Kansas Democratic Party, right? So the Kansas branch of these two groups. They each choose, we're worth 6 points. So the Republicans choose 6 people. Said, all right, if more Kansans show up on election day in November and vote for the Republican for president, okay, then it is these 6 people chosen by the Republican Party that will be of these 538 and go cast their official vote for president. If more Kansans actually would vote for a Democrat, it would be a different 6. It would be the 6 that the Kansas Democratic Party chose. Okay? Now here's the thing. About half of the states, including Kansas in this, there is no law, no federal law, no state law that says these 6 Republicans have to go be part of this 538 and vote for Donald Trump. If they don't vote for Trump, they're not going to prison. There's no law that says they have to go with what the Kansas people voted for necessarily. Now, if they don't, there are consequences, right? You'll be ostracized of your party. You'll never be chosen as an elector again. You'll be looking at it as maybe like a traitor, to your party and not impeding democracy or whatever it might be. Okay, and so there are consequences, but not like jail time. Okay, other states say no, you have to go vote this way. But since a lot of states don't, this is how you get these random electors, right? So one of the 4 Hawaiian electors said, I'm not even voting for Hillary Clinton. I know she won Hawaii, but I'm going to throw Bernie Sanders in there because, hey, I can. They usually call them protest votes for electors. Okay, things got weird in Washington, you can see. So this is how most states do it. Okay, but really what you're voting for then, right? So in Kansas, when you go to vote for president in this November, you're really just saying, hey, I want these 6 electors to go vote for Donald Trump, or I want these 6 electors to go vote for most likely Joe Biden. It's not a direct vote. Your vote does not necessarily count. It's more of a persuasion of which 6 you want to go. Okay. And yeah, here's how the ballots usually look. Something like that. Now this is from, 2004, but it sure looks like you're just voting for these 2. I want these 2 to be president or these 2 to be president. Okay, great. It doesn't say anything about electors. That word's not even on here. So, states don't like play this up like, hey, this is how the system works. They just flat out ask you, who do you want to be president? Okay, and then assuming that their electors are going to end up, voting that way. So it is kind of misleading, okay, but it's not a direct vote for president. It's just not. All right. Now, Who are these electors? Like it said on the last slide for Kansas, it is basically six, party members. Okay, the Kansas GOP can pick whatever six Republicans from around the state that they want. I mean, they're usually, in leadership positions one way or the other, but they are not like state senators or state representatives in Topeka. Okay, they're not really state lawmakers most of the time. Okay, they are just party members that are, working within the system, as part of the party. Now, in 48 of the 50 states, going back to the plurality versus proportional system, remember, it's a winner take all. So we are a plurality system in 48 of the 50 states. Okay? If you win that state, you get all the electoral votes, most likely. Okay? It's a 0 to 100 system. Only Maine and Nebraska, those two states break it up by House district. Okay? But otherwise, you win the state, you get all the electoral votes. So, like, even if you win, let's say Texas by one vote, you get all 38 of those electors from Texas. Okay, so it's a winner take all system, which again makes this tough for third party candidates. If you don't win an entire state, you got nothing to show for it. Right? You could do really, 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 really well, but remember, second place gets nothing. All right. So you actually have to win the whole state. So it's not who gets the most votes, it's who wins the most states. So, example of how this works actually on paper, right? Here are your national voting results. This is from the 2000 election, I believe. Okay, super close election, about, separated by what, a little over 500,000 votes. But who won this? This doesn't matter. Okay, popular vote does not matter. This is what matters. Okay, this determines however many states you won, you get those electors. The Republican candidate, George W. Bush, won, even though he got fewer votes. Same thing happened in 2016, except this margin was a lot more than 500,000. Hillary Clinton got over 3 million more votes than Donald Trump did. Didn't matter. Trump won more states, or at least the states that he needed to win to have more electors. Okay, so there has been a bigger push, really, in the last 20 years to maybe get rid of the Electoral College. And as our population and our demographics change, and as these numbers could get more and more askew, okay, or different, okay, I mean, if you get 3 million more votes, you can make an argument that this is not a good system anymore. But what has happened is the population in some states has gotten so disproportional compared to other ones, okay, that some states are actually overrepresented. All right, now 3, you can see, is the least amount that you can actually have, because every state has 2 senators and at least 1 member in the House. Okay, you cannot get below 3. But based on population, like Wyoming, should not be worth 3 points. Okay, they should be worth like 1 or 1.5 or something like that compared to like California. I know you look, it's like 55 to 3. What is California complaining about? Well, proportionally, this is still an overrepresentation. Okay, and so it's going to make this get much more out of whack as we go forward. And so we need to keep continuing to take a look at this. Now, the numbers on this are going to change. Of course, this is from 2008. Now, we have a census this year, too. I mean, after the census in 2020, this is where states can gain or lose House seats, and these numbers could change. But so let's look at our last few elections here to see which states might have actually gone, flip-flopped and gone both ways. Here's 2008. Okay, this was not very close. Obama won by quite a bit. Okay, now I know the red and blue is about even, but again, you look at the red, and a lot of them just aren't worth a whole lot of points. Okay, so Obama won 1 of the 5 House districts in Nebraska. That's why I remember Nebraska and Maine do it a little bit differently there. Okay, and there's 2012, 4 years later. Okay, here's 8, here's 12. All right, so Romney won a few more states, including, Virginia and North Carolina and Indiana and Florida, but still Obama won. Okay, and then here's 2016 between Clinton and Trump. And again, the darker the red, the more solidly Trump won. The darker the blue, the more solidly Clinton won. Okay, if it's this really light pink, it means Trump just barely won these, or these really light blue, it means Clinton just barely won these. Okay, so and here it is by county. Remember, we're still talking about a rural versus urban split. Okay, the darker the county, the more hardcore it went for Trump. All right, the darker the blue here, the more hardcore it went for Clinton. And of course, you see a lot more red in this, but again, those red counties are usually a lot less populated than the blue. All right. So here's from 2000 to 2012, right? Swing states. States, the easiest way to put it is what I put up here. States that could go either way. Okay. Where either the Democrat or the Republican candidate could probably win it. Safe states, on the other hand, are states that you pretty much know who's probably going to win going ahead. So here's 2000, 2004, 2008, and then 2012. You start looking at these maps and looking at what states have actually swung back and forth, and we're also talking about states that are worth quite a few points here, you know. So where are candidates going to be concerned? Okay, Ohio, 2 red, 2 blue, right? Indiana was 3 red, 1 blue. Florida, red, red, blue, blue. Okay, Virginia, red, red, blue, blue. All right, so these are called the swing states, and this is where you're going to see Biden and Trump campaign in real hard. Okay, and there are some states that are getting more and more 50-50 actually, like Texas is actually getting close to being a swing state in some ways. I don't think it'll go for a Democrat in 2020, but it's getting more and more. Arizona as well. So some of these are actually turning the other way sometimes too, but looking at this during, putting all those 4 maps that we just had together, right? So the ones in purple are the states that have gone, for a Republican twice and a Democrat twice. Okay. And before 2016, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, these had been 100% Democrat. Well, guess what? Trump won all 3 of these. And if he's going to have a chance to win again, he's got to get these 3 again. So these are also swing states I would throw in here too. This map's a little bit outdated at this point. Okay. But again, Texas could maybe be in play for a Democrat soon, or Arizona could be in play for a Democrat soon. So there are, changes going on. And as the census plays out in 2020, this is going to also change some things too. Okay. Kansas, we've been real consistent, just being 100% Republican, and we're only worth 6 points. So I really doubt, okay, you're going to see a whole lot of campaigning from Trump or Biden here in Kansas. If Biden even comes to Kansas at all, I'd be a little bit surprised. Now, maybe they're seeing something here because we did elect a Democratic governor, 2 years ago, but I doubt it. And if Biden does come, it won't be to spend a whole lot of money here in Kansas. All right, but right here through the Midwest is where the election in 2020 is probably going to be won, along with Virginia and Florida. Okay, that's where you're really going to be looking and where they're going to be campaigning real hard. So, why have we not changed the Electoral College? All right, this is kind of our last. We got 5 reasons of why this has lasted now for, over 240 years. Okay, I don't, again, there's a bigger push to change this, all right, but this was the founder's vision, okay, and it's the way we've always done things, and it's how things are set up. If it wasn't set up this way, right, I mean, it would be easy to just say, hey, federal government, we want to change this. But remember, states control their own elections for the most part and how they really carry out the Electoral College's vision. So it's not only a federal law that would have to come down the pipe, but you'd be asking 50 states to maybe change a lot. And so it would be a massive overhaul. It wouldn't be easy to do as well. So there's some logistic reasons for that. And plus, that's just the way the Constitution always was. And even to change it, it would take an amendment, right? I mean, this is built in the Constitution. It is spelled out in the Constitution. And so, again, you'd have to have like massive consensus, 2/3 vote in Congress, and then 3/4, 38 states would have to ratify this amendment and get it changed. Okay, and there's a push to get rid of it, but I don't know if it's quite that big of a push yet. And so we probably just don't have the numbers to change it in the actual Constitution. Okay. And three, of course, the reason against changing it is that states, for a lot of ways, actually do like it, right? States, get to run their own stuff. How to vote, where to vote, what it takes to vote, how you register to vote. States decide all that, okay? And they kind of like running that themselves. Nebraska and Maine, like I said, they do it totally different than the other 48, and they kind of like it that way. Kind of wish every state would do it like Nebraska and Maine, to be honest with you. Go by House district, okay? So there's a lot of state sovereignty there, okay? And of course, for small states, right, who feel like a lot of times they get overlooked in a million different ways by the federal government, right? Because their populations are small, you know, um, but small states are overrepresented. It gives them extra pull in something that they otherwise might not have, right? Again, Wyoming is worth 3, but proportionally they shouldn't even be worth 3, but you can't get lower than that, okay? So, right, for Wyoming, right, you basically divide 584,000 by 3. You have almost, about this many people in Wyoming make up one electoral vote. But California, you have over almost 39 million divided by 55. This is how many Californians make up one electoral vote. I mean, that's a 500,000 person difference. So you could argue, right, that a vote for a Californian is less equal than a vote for as a Wyoming person. You know what I'm saying? Like the votes are not equally. And going back to Baker versus Carr, Shaw v. Reno, you actually have, an argument using the 14th Amendment there that again, one man, one vote, that whole Baker v. Carr doctrine, um, this is out of whack. Okay. So I don't know. I mean, there are constitutional issues here as our populations of certain states get really high or really low. Um, it is something we're going to have to try to figure out later on, okay? And so you could argue, yeah, this is actually not as democratic as it should be. And then our last one here, hey, is just there's really no consensus on what the alternative would be. Okay, so we change it. Okay, great. Do we go to a proportional system? Do we do by House district like Maine and Nebraska do? Do we just go overall popular vote? Okay, but the argument to maybe change it too is that whatever the alternative would be, it probably wouldn't be a winner-take-all plurality system. And so you could argue, hey, it would actually get more people to go vote because you'd have a lot less people feeling like, well, I'm a Democrat in Kansas or whatever it is, or I'm a Republican in California. What's the point of going and voting? The state's going to go for the Democrats, so why should I even go vote? But if your vote really counted for something nationally and you were just going to tally up the totals, you could argue more people would take the time to go do it. Okay? So, this is your last set of notes. Remember, get the study guide done before Thursday, May 7th at midnight. All right, and then I'll be throwing up the study guide key on Friday the next day and getting ready for your test next week. All right, keep taking care of yourselves.